to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. We have got a great program lined up for you today. Thousands of immigrant truck drivers in California are stuck in a legal limbo after their commercial licenses were revoked, putting livelihoods and the state and the nation's supply chain at risk. In just a bit, our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera and I are going to speak with Adam Eckelman of Cal Matters, the author of a report about why it's happening and what happens next. Looking forward to that conversation. But first, as always, we're going to start today's program by taking a look at what's trending across the border, starting with an attorney for a man shot by ICE agents during an arrest in Central California says his client did not run over officers and that he's not wanted in Central America. Reporter Josie Hart has the story.
It doesn't add up.
It's painful.
Tensions were building outside Doctors Medical Center in Modesto on Tuesday night as protesters demanded answers in the ICE-involved shooting of a man in Patterson. 36-year-old Carlos Ivan Mendoza Hernandez was shot by ICE agents during a traffic stop Tuesday morning. Federal officials claiming he was wanted in connection to a murder in El Salvador and suspected of having gang ties. But today, his family and attorney spoke out to dispute that.
Carlos is a family man who was on his way to work when he was detained by ICE. He has had no criminal contacts in the United States.
I know Carlos based on my experience living with him, based on the years that we've been together, the situations that we encounter. And I know he's not that bad person that they're painting outside.
The attorney says despite repeated attempts, they have not been able to see or talk to Carlos or even confirm if he's still alive.
I was given the outside contractor security company's supervisor, and they said, I can't tell you anything, and walked away.
The attorney provided documents from El Salvador officials stating that Mendoza was acquitted in a murder case.
If he was released after being acquitted with no other holds on him, he cannot have a warrant. So that information must be either erroneous or completely made up. And only DHS knows what they're looking at.
The family questions the encounter and why it escalated.
We've all seen the video, and one of our big things here is if you look at the video, the officers there clearly weren't trained how to do a proper traffic stop.
The attorney says the California Highway Patrol initiated the stop over a cracked windshield, but questions why ICE agents became involved.
The only way ICE rolls out on a targeted pickup is either they get a report of fingerprints that go into their system, or somebody picks up the phone and calls. We don't know who on earth would call.
Cindy, who did not provide her last name out of fear for her safety, says Carlos was stopped by Turlock police last Friday for the same cracked windshield and wonders if that could be tied. For now, the family says their priority is simple: getting answers and getting access to Carlos.
Just want him to know that I'm here for you, whole family is here for you, and we will do our best to support you as much as we can.
That was Josie Hart reporting from Patterson, California. Mendoza's fiance was able to speak with him Wednesday and learned that he was going into surgery and is stable. An update now to a story we told you about earlier this week. The wife of a U.S. soldier was released Tuesday from a federal immigration detention facility where she had spent nearly a week after being taken into custody on a Louisiana military base. The detention of 22-year-old Annie Ramos, the Honduran-born wife of a U.S. Army staff sergeant preparing to deploy, prompted public backlash from critics. Ramos, whom married Staff Sergeant Matthew Blank in March, was detained by ICE agents while attempting to register at his base to receive military benefits and ultimately obtain a green card. She's lived in the United States since she was less than 2 years old. DHS said Ramos had been ordered removed by a federal immigration judge in 2005 after her family had failed to appear for a hearing. The couple says she has been attempting to gain legal status, including applying for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program in 2020, though her application remains stalled amid legal battles to eliminate the program. I want to finish my degree, continue my education, and serve my community, just as my husband serves our country with honor, she said after her release. DHS told the Associated Press that Ramos will wear a GPS monitor while she undergoes further removal proceedings. Two Minnesota school districts and the state's main teachers union have asked a federal judge to block a Trump administration change in policy that gave immigration authorities a freer hand to conduct enforcement actions in and near schools. The Department of Homeland Security last year rescinded longstanding nationwide restrictions on immigration enforcement in or near quote-unquote sensitive locations. Those sensitive locations include schools, school bus stops, churches, and hospitals. The old rules effectively made them off limits except in rare circumstances. U.S. District Judge Laura Provenzino said at the end of a hearing in St. Paul on Wednesday that she will rule as soon as possible. New Department of Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin is considering preventing international flights to large so-called sanctuary cities unless they are willing to cooperate with federal officials in enforcing immigration laws moving forward. Mullin accused Democrats of wanting to defund Customs and Border Protection as part of the ongoing partial government shutdown that has affected 22 Department of Homeland Security areas. Mullin said he had floated the idea of targeting international airports in sanctuary cities with high-level conversations with President Trump. He told News Nation that those discussions would likely continue. Mullin made comments during a trip to North Carolina this week saying, "It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that we would process immigrants at an airport and then release them in a city where they're not willing to enforce federal immigration policy." Again, he made that statement to reporters earlier this week. Something that we've talked about here on Border Report Live and we've covered extensively on borderreport.com is the federal government targeting states looking to take licenses away from truck drivers that may be immigrants or foreign born or in the country illegally. Here to talk to us today about that very subject, our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera, and from Cal Matters, Adam Eckelman. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Rudy. Appreciate you. Adam, quickly, let's get into your story. What did you uncover and why is this happening?
Yeah, so there's really a number of different policies that the Trump administration has put forward to try to crack down on immigrant truck drivers, both in California and across the country. Specifically in California, the Trump administration has audited the state's DMV and found what they allege to be some inconsistencies between the dates that the licenses expire and the dates that some of the drivers' work permits expire. That prompted a whole flurry of different actions by the federal government and the state DMV that led to thousands of drivers basically losing their trucking license way before they expected. Then more stuff happened. The Trump administration put forward a policy effectively banning a whole class of immigrants from getting trucking licenses. All told, California expects to lose over 60,000 truck drivers as a result of these policies. And nationally, other states like Texas will be affected too.
How did you uncover all this information? How did you start digging up? Did someone give you a tip, or how did it come about? I'm always interested as a journalist how my counterparts come up with such amazing stories.
Yeah, well, this one is certainly in the news. I mean, the U.S. Department of Transportation has been putting out press release after press release, trying to frame this as a issue, especially in California, while, every state, including Texas, or I should say most states, have been giving licenses to these particular immigrants for years. This is folks who might be seeking asylum, folks who have deferred action for child arrivals or DACA. Many states have been granting trucking licenses to these immigrants. The Trump administration has really tried to crack down on California. It's part of a broader trend we're seeing, where the Trump administration is going after California for what it perceives as liberal policies, fighting with Governor Gavin Newsom. So this is something I've been monitoring for a while. But in addition to that, I've also been writing about trucking industry and trucking as a career more broadly. I actually did an investigation just a few months ago that was looking at how we license and train truck drivers. And that came from, in part tied to this reporting. When something's in the news, my question is always, how can I dig deeper and learn more about the industry?
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of money at stake for California, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the federal government gives money to every state to manage its roads. These are federal highway funds, and they fund a lot of the daily road maintenance that you see when you're driving around. Now, the Trump administration has effectively threatened to withhold around $200 million dollars from California over what they see as mishandling of these immigrants' driver's licenses. For context, $200 million dollars, it's not that much money. It's around 4 or 5% of the total highway funds. But the stakes seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So while at first they threatened to withhold around $200 million, dollars, now the Trump administration is saying they might revoke California's ability to grant any commercial driver's license or trucking license. That could affect about 700,000 folks in the state of California and could upend the state's economy if it happens.
How does the federal government have so much say? Can they just direct the state of California or other states to stop giving licenses to a certain group of people?
Yeah, we live in a federalist society, so the federal government has some role in how states issue driver's licenses, and the states have a role too. It's a complicated system, but this one has more onus on the federal government. The federal government has the ability to restrict and police what's called interstate commerce. And trucking is a little different from, the average driver's license. These are jobs. They are called commercial driver's licenses. To get a commercial driver's license, you have to be eligible to work. And the Trump administration has really cracked down on groups of immigrants that they see as unsafe drivers.
Okay. You profiled in your story a gentleman with the last name of Singh, and he's having a really difficult time making ends meet because he lost his ability to drive. Talk about him and what he has been going through over the last few months.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of drivers actually, and many of them are Sikh or sometimes pronounced Sikh, which is a
Mm.
ethnic minority in India or in the Punjab region. Uh, California has a lot of Punjabi or Sikh drivers who have been affected by this policy. And I talked to this one man whose last name is Singh, who's really stuck in legal limbo. What happened was when the Trump administration first cracked down on all these licenses, he got a letter saying that his license was going to be abruptly canceled. Now, the state of California has filed a lawsuit. There's been a whole slew of other lawsuits that are seeking to restore this man's license. But in the meanwhile, he's out of a job. And it's not just that. He still has to pay his monthly loans for the truck that he bought a few years ago. So he can't find work, and he's got a lot of bills coming up. And this is particularly tricky because trucking is, in some respects, a pretty good job. I mean, you can make even $15,000 a month if you own your own truck as a trucker. So he was making a lot of money. He also had a lot of debts to pay off, including the loan on that truck. And when he suddenly loses his truck, he still has to pay those loans. And now he's, looking for jobs, often at like fast food places and, thinking about driving Uber. Those are not going to pay the bills.
We're speaking with Adam Eckelman from Cal Matters about this latest Trump administration crackdown on immigrants, specifically in the trucking industry. And we're going to continue it on the other side of the break. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Back to this edition of Border Report Live. Today, San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera joining us along with our guest for today's program, Mr. Adam Eckelman with Cal Matters, to talk about the latest Trump administration crackdown on immigrant truck drivers.
Adam, I wanted to ask you about something. We heard a lot about truckers, maybe their lack of English skills, proficiency. Is this in any way related to President Trump's order that came down early last year that all truckers must have the ability to read signs and communicate with law enforcement?
It is, in a sense. The U.S. Department of Transportation has really tried to crack down on any way that the state of California is supporting immigrant drivers. And so one of the early things that the U.S. Department of Transportation did was that they looked at enforcement around English language proficiency, how often the state of California is fining drivers, truck drivers in particular, who may struggle with English. So the Trump administration found that, they alleged the state wasn't doing enough to crack down on drivers with limited English proficiency. And they actually have threatened to withhold around $40 million from the state of California over that. And then all of what I talked about, these drivers losing their licenses, this happened a few months later. So, these two are separate actions, but they're part of a broader effort by the U.S. Department of Transportation to really crack down on immigrant drivers who they see as less safe.
Describe who these drivers are. There's a misconception out there that all of them are unlawful, undocumented, but that's not quite true, right?
That's correct. So to become a commercial driver in California, at least, you need to have a work permit. You need to be licensed to work. So all of the drivers that are affected by this policy, all of the folks who suddenly lost their licenses, all had valid work permits. These were, in a sense, legal immigrants, at least in the sense that they had a right to work in this country. Many of them received DACA. Many of them had pending asylum cases, but that still allows you to work. And I actually spoke to one man, the guy I was talking about earlier, whose last name is Singh. He was approved for asylum. So he actually applied for a green card, which he's eligible for, even eligible to become a citizen ultimately. But the process took a while. He hasn't received his green card. And as a result, he was affected by this policy.
Mhm. Now, Mr. Singh and the other 13,000 drivers who have lost their licenses, can they reapply? Do they have any sort of legal recourse at all?
They do. So there was a court case that found that the state needs to give all of these immigrant drivers a chance to reapply. And the state of California is, in theory, doing that. So everybody can reapply. But notice the word reapply. The state has not yet issued any driver's licenses to any of these folks. The judge has said that the state needs to issue the licenses, but the state hasn't done it. And that's in part because if the state issues driver's licenses to any of these immigrant drivers, the federal government may crack down even harder. So the state is in a bind. If they follow the judge's orders, they may risk, further punitive actions from the Trump administration. The way the state has gotten around this is they've basically said that drivers can reapply and that they will put their applications on hold and consider them for up to a year. But I learned the other day that even at that point, they may not grant them. And this is all kind of legalese in a sense. What it means in practice for drivers is that if you got your license revoked, you can't drive and you don't have a job. You may be able to get a license at some point in the future, but we don't know when. And I want to add one more point here, which is that this is just 13,000 drivers who have already lost their licenses. The Trump administration also put forward a rule prohibiting states from granting licenses to these particular immigrants in the future. So anybody in the U.S., Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, who is a asylum seeker, maybe has DACA, or just, an immigrant who doesn't have a green card or isn't a U.S. citizen, they will lose their license according to this new rule at some point in the next few months or the next few years. When they go to renew their license, they won't be eligible. Or if they're in school right now and they apply, they'll be denied.
Now, here along the border, we are very dependent on truckers to move commerce, so to speak. This will have an effect on our economy, not just here in the border, but across the country. Am I stretching this or exaggerating too much?
It's hard to say. I mean, simple supply and demand, right? If we drop the number of truckers, we expect that costs of shipping might go up because there will be fewer truckers out there. Those who do work might need to get paid more. There is certainly some simple economics that you can just think about. And I've talked to some experts who say prices will probably rise. However, trucking is an incredibly complicated industry. Just as we're seeing, drivers lose their licenses, we're also seeing gas prices go up. That also affects shipping. And it's hard to say exactly what could be causing a rise in shipping costs.
We've been speaking with Adam Eckelman from Cal Matters about his recent reporting, very in-depth reporting on the latest Trump administration crackdown on migrants and other people who are technically in at least California legally allowed to work and their trucking and commercial trucking licenses. We really appreciate you joining us today, Adam, but unfortunately we're out of time.
Thanks for having me.
And quickly, Adam, we can find your story on...
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so I write for a publication called calmatters.org, but we're also a wire service, similar to like the Associated Press, so you can really find it anywhere. You can find it on the Associated Press, you can find it in most major news outlets. Thanks for having me again.
And borderreport.com.
And borderreport.com. I saw I'm on the headline. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much for joining us, Adam. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Border Report Live. You heard Adam mention it slightly about the economics of the trucking industry and how the loss of those drivers could impact the economy. But another thing that's impacting the economy right now is the price of diesel. Now, again, many truck drivers across not just California, but the United States are just parking their rigs instead of paying for the high cost of filling up that tank. As our Salvador Rivera reports, in Southern California, the price of diesel has surpassed $8 a gallon.
If you are noticing the cost of tomatoes, coffee, meat keeps going up, you can blame it on diesel. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was going for $6.75 per gallon. Now at some truck stops here in Otay Mesa, it's going for about $8.25 per gallon. You would never know it, but there are fewer trucks moving back and forth in Otay Mesa than in previous months because some of the drivers have decided to stop working.
I'd rather stop than invest money, or throw my money away, sort of speak.
Jose Ortega is based in Escondido, California. He says having to pay up to $8.25 a gallon for diesel is not good business for drivers like him.
Those of us who are independent, not affiliated with companies, it's getting to the point where it's just not worth driving. Prices have nearly doubled. For example, to make a run to Los Angeles, which is about 125 miles from here, you are filling up for about $250. Not it's more than $400. In the end, consumers are the ones who end up paying more for absolutely everything. All we can do is not drive when they aren't willing to pay us more to cover our costs.
Ortega says in his 30 years of driving, he has never seen diesel prices this high and expects them to go even higher along with the cost of everything else.
Not too long ago, it cost $1.25 per pound for tomatoes. Now it's $2.50 or $2.75. Most people don't make enough to pay those kind of prices.
At Otay Farms in Chula Vista, the cost of tomatoes was actually $2.99 a pound. Ortega says he and other drivers are starting to turn down jobs unless companies offer to cover the cost of diesel up front. He says when you consider the cost of meals and insurance, many truckers are going to go out of business if the price of diesel doesn't come down anytime soon. Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
Before we go, wanted to remind you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Nextstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. So make sure to check it out. You can find more on Political Power Ranker at abc27.com, valleycentral.com, or your local Nextstar station's website. And don't forget, you can always stay informed on the stories shaping the U.S.-Mexico border on your commute home. Maybe you're out walking the dog or getting a workout in the gym, as Border Report Live brings you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in podcast form. You can listen now at any of the apps there at the bottom of your screen. That's Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, and you can get both the audio and visual version on YouTube. That is going to do it for us today. Thank you so much to our guest, Adam Eckelman from CalMatters.org, and, of course, our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera. My name is Rudy Mideles. We'll see you next time.